With the impending release of Captain America Civil War and Doctor Strange to follow, and the rapidly approaching conclusion of the entire cycle of Marvel movies with Infinity War, I thought it would be fun to start tossing out possibilities of the future of the series. Because if you haven't noticed, I am both a geek and a writer, and a lover of coming up with all sorts of impossible ideas. Thus, writing in Geek. A place to outline all of the crazy ideas for franchises I love. The main thrust of this particular idea was thoughts over the less than spectacular showing of the villains of the Marvel movies. Specifically the underwhelming first look at Baron Zemo in Civil War. Ultron was one of many missteps in the second Avengers movie. Ronan didn't manage to capture any of the interesting aspects of the character. Loki has really been the only villain success. Over in the Netflix shows, meanwhile, they've just been knocking it out of the park with both Kingpin and Kilgrave. But it is an oddity that they're having so much trouble in this area, when villains are such an important part of superhero movies in general, and the Marvel Cinematic Universe itself. The entire overall plot of the Marvel Cinematic Universe has been the looming threat of Thanos and the Infinity Gems. He badly needs to stand head and shoulders over any other villain with the slow build. And Thanos as a character is entirely capable of reaching those heights, if handled well, which remains to be seen. So I began thinking, assuming they follow up the scope of the Mad Titan, how do they follow up that? And it dawned on me. Doctor Doom. Now, the first problem is obviously getting the rights to the Fantastic Four back. And given the abysmal showing of the last movie, it's entirely possible. The X-Men movies are unlikely to enter the MCU at any point, given that the movies keep making money for some unfathomable reason. But at this point, perhaps Fox is willing to cut their losses with the FF. Though it could be there are various politics and bad blood issues that prevent it. But isn't that the fun of imagining possibilities? Oftentimes, I see the major idea being that perhaps, with Fox's desire to move the X-Men into the realm of television, they may be willing to cut a deal with Marvel, as Sony has done. If you're unaware, this is because Fox can make X-Men movies until the cows come home. However, they cannot make TV-related properties. They do not have those rights. Now, that possibility here would basically entail Fox relinquishing the rights to the FF. And agreeing to play ball on Marvel's terms with the future of the X-Men properties. They're going to make money on the franchise no matter what, but comparatively speaking, they could make boatloads more by getting on this shared universe bandwagon. Likely Fox will be eyeing the new Spider-Man movie very closely. So if this is going to happen, it won't be till after Homecoming makes money. But let's say for argument's sake that this happens. Obviously, this would lead to the short-term success of being able to bring us a good FF movie. What would such a thing even look like? Well, I have a few thoughts, naturally. Which, before we go anywhere, I need to state it should not have Doom. At all. One of the benefits of these Marvel movies is the slow build that good stories need to become great movies. An event itself is cool, but without build-up, it's a simple moment that's done and gone, rather than being an event that sticks with you. You need to invest in it for it to work well. The problem with the previous Fantastic Four movies, and a lot of superhero movies in general suffer from, is the idea of doing it all now because you won't get another shot. No. You are going to get another shot. If you fail, there will be a reboot within a decade. These are properties that survive beyond shitty movies. Now, there's this prevailing thought that you need to put your best foot forward. This is a good rule of thumb that is mutated into this bastardized form of, they like these stories, so let's do all the stories. No, wrong. You know who you are. If you make a good movie, it doesn't matter if you're reserving something back for the next one. You absolutely need to give the first one your all. But that does not mean you have to shove it all into the first movie. The heroes in these comics are larger-than-life figures with decades of backstory to draw upon and defining stories. Seeing them first start out on the road to heroism is a perfectly valid movie to make. There is nothing wrong with an origin movie. I understand. You know the backstories. You've seen Bruce Wayne's parents murdered so many times. You want to get to all the better stories they could tell. I understand. But I don't have a problem with them, because I want to see the hero's story told well. And if the retelling of the origin is well told, then bring it on, because it lays a groundwork for all the other cool stuff you want to see too. Again, I understand. You've seen these stories before. But here's the thing. All stories have been told before. It's the telling of them, the new details and interpretations that make them unique. Make them special. As long as it is a good movie, there is no reason not to retell an origin story if the intent is to build a framework to then build something bigger and better than the stuff we've seen before. A hero's story will always be interesting if told well. But here's the thing. A hero's origin is an epic unto itself. And if you try to cram too much other stuff on top of it, you lose that focus. The foundation crumbles, and you end up with a bad origin movie. There are certain villains that fall under the criteria of being too big to have in an origin film, because they themselves are larger than life. They dominate the stories they're in. Their backstories and defining events are just as epic, if not more so, than the heroes they face. So suddenly your movie is trying to support the weight of two epic stories within the framework of a tale that can support one only when done well. Most movies can't even do it within one, so you are already setting out to fail. But there is another possibility. In order to have them fit with all the other stuff going on, they need to be lessened. You need to tone them down and kind of sideline them. Doom is one of those villains that exists in the form of not just a movie epic, but he alone could support an entire saga of movies. To reduce him to just some businessman or a blogger guts the character to an unrecognizable point that is effectively neutering you from going forward. You've shown us the greatest villain you have to work with. And that's it? What else is there? So, if that's it, why did I even bother watching this one? Bah! Origins suck! Your franchise has crumbled because you didn't give it the breathing room it needed for your main characters, their main foe, and their defining stories. I've given this a bit of thought. And the ideal setup for a Fantastic Four trilogy would be origin / exploration of the negative zone / Annihilus for the first movie. It gives you a chance to have fun with the family dynamic because that's the fun of the origin story of these characters. Not, wee, superpowers, we're gonna be superheroes! No, it's how their powers and physical changes influence the family dynamic. Reed begins to doubt himself, causing Sue to back him up and ground him from becoming a egotistical psychopath. Sue's transformation enables her to become more visible, being more parental to her little brother, and stand up to Reed when he potentially goes wrong. Johnny is the kid granted incredible powers and unable to handle them, with his family helping him grow and mature. And good old Ben Grimm. A relationship with his best friend tainted by resentment, but also understanding that Reed is not truly at fault. Just like that sibling who wronged you, but you know in your heart they did not mean to do any harm. This then gives you the scientific exploration that's at the core of these characters. Reed and Sue want to know and expand human understanding. Johnny just wants adventure. And Ben wants to protect his loved ones. But all of them agree that these journeys are important. It's not a burden. Science and understanding are not burdens or crosses to bear. It's a drive and passion to want to know. Their physical changes are unfortunate, but not crippling. It's something to adapt to and use to continue forward. And an alien dimension like the negative zone is perfect for this primary motivation. Then you have the evil one-dimensional Marvel movie-style threat. A monster that has powers beyond comprehension that cannot be reasoned with. A being that is a threat on his own, but only becomes more so when you realize he has an army at his command. Annihilus is such a great villain for this because, well, he supports the larger stories. He himself is not at all a compelling character. You could not make a film with Annihilus alone and have it work. But as an origin threat, he would work because he doesn't bring anything to the table other than being a threat. Then, bonus points for also setting up the Annihilation storyline to have a nice cosmic epic going on in the movies. Second movie, you introduce Doom. But play it off with the Namor storyline, with Doom trying to get his hands on the Serpent Crown by manipulating Namor into distracting the Fantastic Four, as Doom tries to take over the world with Atlantean forces. Namor works here because he can carry a movie on his own. But the complexities he brings benefit other stories so well. He adds an interesting dynamic to the Sue Reed relationship. And just his personality works when paired with any of the others. Doom especially. Because it is always a blast to see egos clashing. So why would Doom work here with the Namor story going on, but not the origin movie? Because here, the two stories feed one another and enhance them. A Namor versus Fantastic Four movie would be okay. But what is the point for them coming into conflict? Namor and the Atlanteans are not evil. So why are we watching our heroes fuck up Atlantis? And why are the Atlanteans trying to fuck up our heroes? When you inject a third party, it adds dramatic conflict. That's why romantic triangles are such a go-to concept for stories. But it is very important that this comes in the form of a capable threat. That this clash is not just a heroic dick measuring contest, but rather someone else trying to gain something from this conflict. Doom as an antagonist setting this off not only benefits our characters by making the conflict believable and compelling, it benefits him in turn, showing that he's capable of creating this conflict. Capable of manipulating two smart men into going head to head, effectively outwitting them both for his own gain. But it's also good in that, while it shows what Doom is capable of, it also does not show off all of his cards. There is still more Doom has up his sleeve. Oh, Doom kidnapped the FF and took them to his country of Latveria? Okay, what else you got? Instead, you get, man, this guy Namor is a dick. But he's not so evil. Oh shit! There's this evil guy who took over all this stuff and is trying to rule the world! Whoa! Wait, the manipulation game from the last movie wasn't all he could do? He's also a Tony Stark level genius? Doctor Strange level sorcerer? And he's ruler of his own fucking country? Holy shit! What else can he do? With a slow build, you allow Doom to go from being a one-note villain who loses in his first appearance to being a villain who suffered a setback before showing their full hand. Anyway, Doom loses, Reed and Sue get married, everyone's happy. Except Doom had an ulterior motive. Uncovering information on a global threat, setting up a third movie. Now, the third movie comes to a crossroads of two possibilities. One, Secret Invasion. You combine several Skrull stories into one, having the world invaded by sinister shapeshifters and their Queen Varanki. Ideally, you could set up Spider-Woman elsewhere in the movies, or even use someone like Captain Marvel for an extra shock. But you could also make this a standalone movie given its scope, like Avengers 4 or 5. Doom doesn't need to be involved. But it makes an excellent tease in him knowing the threat was coming, even before it was conceived by our heroes. It elevates Doom again. He knows more of what's going on. This is not good for our heroes. Once the Skrull threat is ended, there is potentially something worse waiting. And Doom doesn't even need to be in the movie at all to reap the benefits of the teaser. The other possibility is the obvious one. The coming of Galactus. Big purple guy, world ship, Silver Surfer, the whole shebang. This one would work much better as a FF movie given its focus on the family. The Surfer's ties and the help of Doom with his ulterior motives. Even with the global level threat. Other Marvel heroes can make cameos without needing to contribute too much to the overall plot. as the tale boils down to essentially Reed outwitting and staring down a cosmic force of nature, leading to his herald rebelling and having all kinds of existential cosmic adventures of his own. Though a Silver Surfer movie would be a whole other long-ass video. And with that, boom, you have a set of FF movies worthy of the comics and the MCU. But, what about Doom? The whole point of this video. I'm glad you asked. Doom is such an ever-present threat to the Marvel Universe, you could easily have him appear in a handful of other movies. How about a Spider-Man movie with him dealing with having to protect a diplomat from, say, the Chameleon? Or some other major Spidey villain plot. Doom in New York playing diplomat, well, something else is going down. Using events in his favor, but not really being responsible for the main plot. This would essentially turn Doom into the flip side of Tony Stark from the first 3 phases. Making a cameo here or there, or just being evil goodness. Also operating like Thanos, but doing more than just sitting in a chair the whole time. Hell, you can even toss him in an Avengers movie. Doom's tech and magic versus Stark and Strange. Naturally losing to the heroes each time, but still showing him to be a capable threat. When Doom is written well, even his losses make him larger. Being able to overcome setbacks to reach new heights. Which, oddly, sounds like a certain first family of Marvel. But wait, if Doom keeps losing, how does that make him the big bad of the next MCU cycle? An excellent question. And the answer? It's all part of the plan. Doom is such a threat because he's brilliant. A rival to Reed Richards and Tony Stark. And essentially this means you structure his movies accordingly. Each movie you have Doom in, you have him going after something to further his goals for world domination or revenge. Overall, he loses these bids. However, you also structure it so that each of these movies' grand scheme is, in fact, a small step towards a larger goal. Doom steals the Serpent's Crown, and uses an Atlantean army to try and conquer the world, but fails. However, his crown also enabled him to do something else towards his larger endgame that the heroes or audience failed to notice at the time. It's all part of the plan can be poor writing. Because why would you plan to lose? But that's the thing. When it's well written, it shows an evil mastermind not only set out to do this one particular thing, he also has a plan B that in the end also gets him to where he wants to be, if not quite as fast. It's poor writing when you just have someone cackle and say it was all part of the plan. You add multiple dimensions when you plot out and show how this plan works. You screw up at work. Not a major problem, but a clear setback. You won't get that promotion. But you don't turn around and quit your job, burn down your house, and start a new identity in another country. No, you have a backup plan. I'm not getting that promotion, so I just have to put in a few more hours. You don't just give up. So anyway, after the further 3 phases, it's time for the next reality-spanning conflict. And there's only one natural way to go. Secret Wars. Now, obviously you don't do it exactly like the comic. You've got a ton of other material to draw on, including the latest Secret Wars comic. But essentially you do a Secret Wars Part 1. And set it up like a big brawl between the heroes and villains of the MCU. The important part is the omnipotent cosmic beyonder pitting them against one another for whatever reason. Survival of realities, statement of good versus evil, whatever. And throughout the movie you have the heroes making a bad deal with the villains to try and get out. Working together to try and stop this. The principal one being the combined intellects of Reed and Doom. Unfortunately, as they achieve victory in the conclusion of the movie, Doom reveals his true plan. Now, obviously you can't make the heroes gullible fools. Instead, you make the villain's plot so stupidly grand that the heroes wouldn't even conceive of this being his goal. To steal the powers of the Beyonder for himself. God, Doom! Oh noes! Cut to black. Cliffhanger goodness. Part 2 rolls around and everything is a utopia. You could kind of play it off in a House of M style thing. But the idea is that when we rejoin things, the heroes have become happy. Ben Grimm is a man once again. Spidey has whoever he's lost in his own movies back. Basically, you play with the concepts of them all having their greatest wish. But naturally, things aren't quite right. Doom is still the benevolent god of the universe. Slowly, the heroes come to realize that their lives are not quite right, with the main conflict of the movie being whether or not to reset everything. Let's say there's no crime in Doom's utopia, but it comes as a result of re-education for the most minor of infractions. Littering, smoking, whatever. Just so you have more of an evil dictator side of Doom. You still have deep questions of what the cost for utopia would be on a global and personal level. Is it worth freeing the world if you'll lose your greatest wish in the end? Naturally it is. And the heroes must find a way to take down a god through punches and action with some witty resolution. You could even have Sue be one of the propelling forces of the story as Reed has been wiped from existence, and her memories of him driving her to get him back. Suddenly you have a movie that's not just about people in tights punching one another, but a story about people trying to reclaim something they've lost. People trying to hold on to the things they've found. People trying to make a utopia. People who have a different idea of utopia. The concepts of utopia itself. Something dealing with all manner of interconnected themes and ideas. All built on a movie of an armored dick trying to fuck over a scientist and his family. But you gotta build up to it. I don't really see any other Marvel villains being the level of a Thanos-style threat. But that's where Doom would work so well. In his own way, he's so much more than Thanos. Thanos is a cosmic-level threat. His obsession with death, driving him to murder and snuff out as much life as possible to appease his beloved. No doubt Infinity War will involve lots and lots of death. And how could you possibly follow that up? By going in a similar but different direction. Doom's motives are entirely different from Thanos. Thanos has a selfish goal with selfish motivations. And, well, Doom's goal is also selfish. His motives are also, in a twisted way, benevolent. Doom doesn't want power for the sake of it. He simply sees himself as the best choice to rule. He does not trust the individual to do it for themselves. But nor does he believe anyone else is capable of leading humanity, other than himself. And in some ways, he's correct. That's what makes him so compelling a villain. In a time of so much political disagreement and the scorn of the politician, Doom's outlook is such an appealing one, and one humans fall for time and again. It's not that he's a mustache-twirling psychopath. It's that he speaks to our fears of humanity, the idea of what humans do to one another when left unchecked, and plays nicely into the thoughts of what the true cost of a utopia would be. No crime, poverty, war, but no freedom either. He's a man driven by his own ego, but in his own ways, he's correct. He protects his people of Latveria from the war and strife of the outside world. He brings technological advancements and an elevation of everyday life. And all he asks is that you revere him. Obey him. The best villains are ones who are, well, the hero of their own story. And that's something the MCU needs badly. Doom has always been one of my favorite villains because of his absurdity. Every time they try and ground Doom in one of the movies, it becomes painfully obvious they don't get why Doom is so fantastic. But we are finally at a point where we can get a billionaire playboy tech genius and a former surgeon master of the mystical arts. It's time we got the villain worth rivaling them both. I've got a few other ideas for individual Marvel stuff, but I wanted to jot down this idea for what's to come after Infinity War, so that I can be deeply disappointed when it doesn't come to pass. Anyway, I hope you've enjoyed the premiere of Writing in Geek. I've got plenty of ideas to ramble about, so be sure to like and subscribe if you want to see more. Conversely, feel free to head down to the comments and tell me how horrible my ideas are. See you next time on Writing in Geek.